And we're recording, so whenever you're good, we're good.
All right, cool. All right, we will go then in 3, 2, 1. And hello to all of you out there in podcast world. This is the Front Row Network. I'm your host, Brandon Davis, and we are back here for episode 50 of Zone of Sodes. Actually, episode 52 of us, because we did that intro episode and then the season 1 wrap-up. But we are talking about episode 50 of The Twilight Zone, The Whole Truth, from January 20th, 1961. I am Brandon Davis, as I already mentioned, but I have with me...
I am Scott, and before we begin this episode, I just need to do one thing.
Yes.
There we go. I'm ready. Let's do this.
Wonderful, and we are back, and we are better than ever. Maybe
that's debatable.
We made our grand return last week, and we're down, and we're talking about an interesting episode here, and another one of those from season 2 that was shot on kinescope, or another nickname that Scott likes to give it.
Shot on studio.
Yes, but this is actually going to be a fun one to talk about. I think we'll see as we get into it.
Okay.
But in an interesting episode, let me read what Rod's opening words for this episode are, and then I'll have Scott go into his plot synopsis. This is the banner already has proclaimed as Mr. Harvey Hunnicut, an expert on commerce and con jobs, a brash, bright, and larceny-loaded wheeler and dealer who, when the good Lord passed out a conscience, must have gone for a beer and missed out. And these are a couple of other characters in our story, a little old man and a Model A car. But not just any old man and not just any Model A. There's something very special about the both of them. As a matter of fact, in just a few moments, they'll give Harvey Hunnicut something that he's never experienced before. That's the good offices of a little magic that will unload on Mr. Hunnicut the absolute necessity to tell the truth. Exactly where they come from is conjecture, but as to where they're heading for, this we know, because all of them, and you, are on the threshold of the Twilight Zone.
So I'm starting to realize I'm a terrible host, because last week I did two things. One, I forgot we had 2 extra episodes. So when I said last week was episode whatever it wasn't, but whatever. Thanks for pointing that out, Brandon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then I also pointed out, I also said that we're going to be dealing with Mikhail Gorbachev, which is only 30 some odd years, or 20 some odd years off, because we're definitely dealing with Nikita Khrushchev. But it's been 4 months since I did an episode, so bite me. Okay.
So, Scott, go ahead, though, and do your plot synopsis.
Oh, let me butcher this now. Harvey Hunnicut is like almost every single used car salesman. And if you're a used car salesman who subscribes to us, be honest. You're kind of like Harvey. Even if you don't want to say you are, you kind of are. And based on how much I've had to deal with my Toyota Highlander lately, I don't have any time for used car salesmen. So you're all evil. But if you're listening to us, please give us a good review and like and subscribe. Okay.
Yes.
Harvey Hunnicut is, as Brandon already pointed out, a person who doesn't really have a conscience and doesn't really have any qualms lying to people left and right. He will lie to anyone to sell a car, even if that car shouldn't be allowed to be on the streets, let alone sold to anybody. Until an old gentleman comes in with a vintage Model A car who he wants to sell for a very small fee. Harvey is obviously weirded out by the fact that he has trying to sell him a car for very, very minimal amount of money. And so finally he gets the old man to tell him that the car is haunted and it is cursed. And if you purchase the car, it will make you tell the truth in everything you do. Harvey buys the car and immediately realizes that is the case, as he has to tell the truth about his cars to anyone and everyone who asks. And he also finds out he has to tell the truth to everybody, including his wife, when he wants to go hang out with the guys, and just tells his wife he wants to go hang out with the guys, which goes over real well with his wife. Finally, Harvey realizes he needs to get rid of this car, but it is such a terrible piece of machinery that it is almost impossible to sell but he finally comes up with an idea. He calls the Soviet embassy because Nikita Khrushchev is in town visiting the States. And he points out that this would be a wonderful way for Russia to point out the inability of the United States to make a quality piece of workmanship. The Russians buy the car, and Nikita himself drives off in the back seat. And then Harvey realizes that now that Nikita owns the car, Khrushchev must tell the truth. And so he tries to get on the phone with Jack Kennedy. The end.
Which, being now January of '61, we are officially into the Kennedy era here on Twilight Zone.
Party like a Kennedy. It's
great. So, Scott, let's start out with your opening thoughts about the whole truth. Give us the truth about the whole truth.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's let me tell you my thoughts in a nutshell.
Okay.
Oh. Again, this is your standard run-of-the-mill Twilight Zone kind of plot. Mm-hmm. You've got an interesting idea. You know, what if and you can see them all in the writer's room kind of sitting around throwing this out saying, mm-hmm. What if a used car salesman has to tell the truth? Okay, and they follow through with it, unlike last week where they really didn't follow through with anything that it could have. This is about where it's going to go. I mean, what else can you do with this idea of a salesman who has to tell the truth? As a guy who used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door, yeah, this is about what it's going to look like if you got to tell the truth when you're trying to sell stuff. But yeah, even the twist at the end, if it's really a twist about selling it to the Russians, cute. Yeah, it was cute. The guy playing Harvey was okay. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to better episodes.
Well, I'm going to give it this. It's clever. It is clever, and it works well. When I was watching this, I was thinking I really enjoy episodes of TV where a character has to tell the truth in some way all the time, just because I think it's a really interesting psychological thing, and sitcoms do this really well. This felt more like a sitcom episode to me than a Twilight Zone episode. There's an episode of I Love Lucy called Lucy Tells the Truth, where Ricky bets her she can't tell the truth for more than 24 hours, and of course hilarity ensues and she gets herself into a lot of big situations. There's an episode of the Bob Newhart Show where he decides he's only going to tell people the truth, and that's a little more cerebral comedy, but this is what this episode sort of felt like to me. So it didn't feel really like an episode of the Twilight Zone, but there is a sort of surreal cleverness to it that I like. It doesn't have that kind of smack in the face moral dilemma that the best episodes of the Twilight Zone give you. I mean, there wasn't really anything major to think about, like at the end of Monsters Are Due or Eye of the Beholder or The Hitchhiker or something like that. And it's not one that leaves you scared or anything like that. But it's kind of your middle of the season. Just let's find an interesting idea. Let's write to it. And let's make something out of it. But as you said, and I agree with you, they accomplished their goal with this episode, unlike Back There, which we talked last week. They actually presented their idea and they fleshed it out fully. But you're right. It is kind of a run of the mill, average Twilight Zone episode. I don't know if that's going to give away my ranking at the end, but we'll talk about it later.
Gee, what's it going to be?
No. So, but first, Scott, let's talk about what works for you in this episode.
Harvey works for me. I mean, in total, the actor's very good. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of just being a slimy salesman, it's the kind of role that you can sink your teeth into if you're a really good actor, and he's able to pull that off. And so it's Jack Carson. I finally figured out who it was. I'm sure you've seen him in multiple shows, Brandon, because you're much more schooled on film than I am. But it's he definitely plays it well. He definitely chews at the scenery, which is what he should do. And you can see he's having some fun with it. It is really fun when he tries to sell the car to the young couple, and he's trying to sell them on the fact that the tires aren't really bald; they're made for speed and things of that nature. So it's really fun to watch there, and it's enjoyable. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm not going to be so very hard on this episode as I have been on others, because at least there's a character in here that I can attach to and enjoy watching throughout.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say Jack Carson is one of my favorite character actors from this era, and he's in a lot of movies, but he was never the lead in anything. He was always, you know, a comic sidekick. He was always a shady. Sometimes he would play villainous characters or whatever, but TV shows like this, I'm grateful for, because they would give these people a chance to shine and be the lead in something. And this is the perfect vehicle for him to do that. I think that if there's anyone who could play a shady car salesman, it's Jack Carson, and he was perfect for that. As you mentioned, I think he plays the character well. I think like back there, the casting is good for this episode, but the casting actually goes somewhere in this episode. And there's moments that I like. I like when he's explaining to the employee that he never gives he actually never gives his employees raises. He just strings them along, and he gets punched out for that. And I like all those little scenes, and I did appreciate the twist at the end. I was wondering what was going to happen when I first saw it, because this was one I hadn't seen before. But the fact that they worked Khrushchev into it and everything, I'm like, well, that's cute. It's dated, but it's a fun reference. It's really sort of sets you in that time, or whatever. And well, actually, maybe now with what we're dealing with Russia, it's not so dated. But
if our Russian overlords are listening, and we just got some weird feedback. Seriously, on the recording when you said that. So when our Vladimir, if you're listening, and see, I make this joke because people may not know. Brandon and I live in Illinois, and it was confirmed that Russians did hack into Illinois' election database. So the Russians do know about Brandon and I. Brandon, if you voted in a primary, the Russians know a lot about you, and
oh, wow.
I have, so the Russians know a lot about me.
Oh, okay.
Cybersecurity for the win.
That is comforting. So we will. I'll be planning my next trip to Moscow very soon. So, but yeah, like I mentioned before, I think it's clever, and I think it's pulled off well. So we'll go with that. But let's talk about the things that don't work for you with this episode, Scott.
Shot on Shidio.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and we kind of talked about this already, but what happened here? If this is the first episode you're catching where we're talking about this, and you're wondering why the hell does this look like a soap opera? CBS went to Rod and said, we need to save some money here, and so we want you to experiment using video, which video does a couple different things. One, it obviously looks terrible, but two, because the video cameras are very different than what film cameras are, it doesn't allow you to have many really good shots. So these feel more like stage plays than they do film, because that's what you can do with video. You can do one or two shots at a time, and then you're moving on. And what we found out was they did 13 episodes, I believe. What they found out was it saved them a grand total of, throughout all the episodes combined, it saved them $20,000. So CBS was like, okay, they look like crap, and it didn't save us any money, so we're not going to do this anymore. So, but really, I mean, as soon as I see one of these episodes from season 2 pop up, I'm just like, oh god, here's another video one. But I mean, Night of the Meek was one of these, and it's one of my favorite episodes. So I mean, it's just it's tedious, but it's not going to kill an episode for me one way or the other. What does kill an episode for me is just boredom. And again, when you have the idea of if a salesman has to tell the truth, you get everything, you get all the jokes right away. You get the whole, he can't sell a car now because he can't lie about the crappy cars he has on his lot. He has to tell the truth to his wife, so he can't lie to his wife. that's the jokes. And once those jokes are hit, we still got another 15 minutes of runtime. And so it just gets tedious for me. And it kind of runs long. The Russian punchline is literally the last minute and a half of the show. So you've got 10 minutes of Harvey walking around having to tell the truth. And I've seen Liar Liar. It wasn't that good with Jim Carrey, and it's not that good with Jack Carson. So that's it.
Yeah, and that's really what I was going to say. What doesn't work for me? I mean, it's a clever idea, but it's a clever idea for a 10-minute skit on a variety show.
Yep.
It doesn't work for a half-hour anthology series. It doesn't really have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just kind of one long middle with a quick little button at the end. But yeah, and like I said before, the best episodes of the Twilight Zone, even some of the more lighthearted ones like Night of the Meek or whatever, they really leave you they really leave you with something to really think about at the end. And this one, it's got a little moral to it or whatever, but it's nothing that's gonna really leave you thinking about it long after it's over. You just kind of move on to the next one. So it's one of those really sort of assignment episodes of the Twilight Zone where they had to get something written. But unlike certain other ones like Back There, they were able to really deliver on the idea that they wanted to. So you can't fault them too much, but it's nothing too special, I guess I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess now that we've come sort of to the end of our discussion here, it's time to talk about our ranking for this week. And if you're just joining us, or if you're rejoining us after our hiatus, you might forget how we actually rank these things. So we rank these Twilight Zone episodes on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute best the Twilight Zone has to offer, and in turn being one of the best episodes ever on television. 5 being an average Twilight Zone episode, which a lot of times, because of the high quality of the Twilight Zone, could be the best some other shows have to offer. And 1 being The Fever, or as Scott likes to always say, The Bewitching Pool, which we've prolonged my viewing of The Bewitching Pool now, so I have to wait even longer probably to see it.
We will catch up, and I guarantee you, barring dismemberment or death, we will get to Bewitching Pool on Valentine's Day 2020. And I still think that should be a live viewing of Bewitching Pool, because I want to see your reactions when we watch that.
Okay. All right, we'll do it.
We got another year and a half to go.
All right. So Scott, where on a scale of 1 to 10 do you rank The Whole Truth?
Well, it's not an average episode, because it's not one of those episodes I'm going to go back and watch again. So I can't give it a 5, but it definitely is not as bad as Back There was there last week. So I'm going to give it right between an average episode and a crappy episode and say it's a 4. It's not bad. Again, Jack Carson does a good job of chewing the scenery, but you said it the best. This is a 10-minute short that it's extended to 30 minutes, and it just does not hold up. So 4.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I might have given away my ranking, and I came in here intending to give it a 5. But as we've talked about it, and I was thinking about other episodes, I gave it a 5. I'm like, I don't think I can quite rank it that high, and so I'm taking it down to a 4. But it's it's not bad by any means. It's just not. It's not something that you're going to go back and watch again and again. It was a good effort, and they accomplished what they wanted to, but it's not going to be in your Hall of Fame of Twilight Zone episodes. So yeah. So any final thoughts, Scott?
not for The Whole Truth, but we've been kind of spinning our wheels here past couple weeks. But next week we got a very interesting one. Some people would say is one of the best ones of all time, and I'm sure we'll have to talk about that. And then I'm looking forward to season 2. Is it's hit or miss, and we're seeing that, a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but some of my favorite episodes are coming up in season 2. One of my all-time favorites is coming up. It actually, if we hadn't taken a break, we'd be reviewing it today.
Oh, wow.
But we'll have to play catch up a little bit to get there.
Well, we'll get there. So as we conclude this episode, and he hinted at it, but we are talking about a Hall of Fame episode of the Twilight Zone on most people's lists. So we'll have a good time talking about that. But before we conclude here, let me give you Rod's final words, and then I'll have Scott tell you where you can find us. Couldn't happen, you say? Far-fetched, way out, tilt of center? Possible. But the next time you buy an automobile, if it happens to look as if it had just gone through the Battle of the Marne, and the seller is ready to throw into the bargain one of his arms, be particularly careful in explaining to the boss about your grandmother's funeral when you were actually Chavez Ravine watching the Dodgers. It'll be a fact that you were the proud possessor of an instrument of truth manufactured and distributed by an exclusive dealer in the Twilight Zone. So, Scott, where can people find us?
You can find us online at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. You can find us on Facebook at Zona Sodes Podcast or at the Front Row Movie Reviews. You can email us at thefrontrowmoviereviews@gmail.com. Please send us your lovely feedback, hate mail, whatever you want to send us there. If you're listening to the podcast version, please make sure that you subscribe to us and give us a review on your podcast app of choice, be it iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is. Those reviews really help bring us up in the search engines and gets more people involved into this conversation, which we love. And if you're watching the video version on YouTube, same idea. Please make sure to like and subscribe and give us some comments in the chat. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us how terrible we are and where we can do better. We love to hear that too.
And as we conclude this episode of Zona Sodes, I am Brandon Davis.
And I am Scott.
And we will see you on the couch.
The little machines are coming to invade us. They're going to shock us with their Robbie the Robot hands.
And stab us.
And stab us.
See ya.
Adios.